Welcome to this week's edition of Trading Bits and Bytes. I'm Susan Littlefield. It finds us at the Triumph of Ag Farm Show that took place at the CHI Health Center in downtown Omaha. Jeff Peterson joins us. We seem to be doing these a lot on the road lately.
I know, it's kind of convenient, isn't it?
It is. Jeff, of course, is with Heartland Farm Partners, and let's start looking at what we're seeing in these markets. South America, we know that they've had some weather issues, but where are they at when it comes to actually planting this second crop?
I know, it seems like we've been talking about them planting a crop for a long time now, but their soybean harvest does get a little spread out, and actually, as we talk about the planting of the safrinha corn, they're about 61% planted. Now that lags behind 79% is where they were last year, but last year was a fast start. Normally they're about 71% planted. The thing we can hope for, there's a couple items. We can hope for maybe they don't quite plant as many acres because it gets too late, because as we've talked many times, the problem with planting the corn this time of the year or later is that ultimately it could get into the dry season and impact the fill, which in turn could impact their yield. So that's a possibility that we could see.
So you talk a little bit less when it comes to planting. What does that mean for us here in the States?
Well, I think for us here in the States, what that could open up the door to is it could open up the door to maybe some exports that we could pick up in the summer before they actually get back around to when they're planting their crop or harvesting their crop, because what that means is that it'll just come off a week or two later, gives us a little bit of window. The concerning thing we're seeing, though, is at this time, we would expect to be the cheapest corn, and we're not the cheapest corn at this point. So unfortunately, Argentina is a little cheaper yet. So hopefully that comes around here soon so we can get some better export demand.
China's now coming through on their phase one, and they're also talking some tariff reductions as well.
Yeah, they are, and that started on March 2nd. They started accepting applications. We haven't heard whether or not anybody has actually been approved yet. What they talked about before is that if people were approved, they would actually go ahead and issue those exemptions right away. That is for 1 year, so keep in mind, just because they buy now or don't buy now doesn't mean that they couldn't step in later. But what area we are seeing them actually do a little digging around and looking for some stuff is on the distiller's grain. They have been rumored to buy some of that. They have been buying some grain sorghum, but we think that was actually before there was any tariff exemptions actually issued. In addition, they have been looking for a little bit on the ethanol side, but we don't know whether or not they're going to pick up any of that. And then over on the soybean side, unfortunately, Susan, we're just still too expensive. Our cheapest beans we have to offer is off the Pacific Northwest up in the PNW, but we're just still too expensive on those beans yet.
Which is a good news, bad news type of situation for our growers.
Yeah, it is. I mean, unfortunately, we really need to get to a point where we're able to start exporting that. But that doesn't mean China won't show up. It's just that they may show up later than what we'd expected. And it may be that it isn't on the 2019 crop, which ends here in August of 20th or the end of August of 2020. But it could mean that it gets put off into the 20 crop.
Much anticipated reports coming yet this month of March.
Yeah, and the first one we've got coming up next week would be the WASDE report. That's going to come out on the 10th. A few things we're watching at. We are concerned on the export sides a little bit. What we're concerned about there is that because our exports are lagging on both corn and beans, we think there is a chance that they may come in and actually lower those slightly. Bigger chance, I think, on the corn side than the bean side. How much? Maybe 50 million, maybe 75 million. So we'll have to watch and see what those numbers bring next week.
And then, of course, the big report at the end of the month, which could change a lot of things.
It really could, and that's going to really set the tone. And I think that's what really, in order to get this market going higher, what we're going to end up having to see is that we'd have to see actually some lower numbers coming out of that report at the end of the month, or we have to see China stepping in and starting to pick up with some purchases. But with what's going on out there right now, especially when you've got the Argentine peso putting in new lows, you got the Brazilian real putting in new lows, it just makes it hard for us to be real competitive.
Jeff, is there anything else that we need to do to try to get these markets to move to the higher to benefit?
I think the biggest thing right now would be is if we could get China to come in and buy some, but I think the other thing gets to be that spring weather. And if we don't get China to buy, and if we don't get some spring weather with the coronavirus on there, I'm concerned that we still do have some more downside from here.
And that coronavirus is going to stick around for a while.
It is, and the new development we did see on that is that actually we did see a little bit of a few cases show up in actually India, and we'd had some talk that we thought some of the biggest numbers had actually been scored in China, but if for some reason India wouldn't been able to control it. Now they're just getting started. There are about 29 cases, but if something did happen there, then that'd be another area that could be very significant numbers.
Interesting time for ag, but as we look back a whole year ago, we had blizzards and flooding, so at least we've got something positive working for us with some warmer temperatures headed our way.
Yeah, very much, and we're going to start hearing more about the field work side, so we're going to have to keep our eyes peeled.
We're definitely ready for field work, and we are at the Triumph of Ag Show on this week's edition of Trading Bits and Bytes. I'm Susan Littlefield.